We have some breaking news to go over today as an NBA insider has dropped a bombshell report on the Los Angeles Lakers surrounding DeAndre Ayton and his future in Los Angeles. And following what has been a crazy few days of reports and rumors for Lakers, and specifically regarding their acquisition of a center, a new report has revealed a big move is imminent. We're going to break that down as well as also discuss some interesting other updates surrounding the Lakers that change everything going forward. But before we get into it all, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, we're less than 1,000 subscribers away from 20,000 subscribers. So you want to help us reach that goal, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You guys have been an absolute beast with the support. Folks, lots to go over today, and obviously today's the day for the DeAndre Ayton, I guess, sweepstakes, if you want to call it that. Waivers. He'll be able to technically clear waivers tonight, and that's when, of course, a move is going to be happening, and we're all waiting. There were some rumblings about then maybe falling out of the sweepstakes a little bit and pursuing a trade like I covered yesterday with Nick Richards, Robert Williams, all these different guys. However, a brand new report has dropped today, multiple reports that is, revealing some big information. And let's start with the report from Jake Fisher. And Jake Fisher came out and said, sources say the Pacers have registered interest in Ayton. So that's a big kind of development. I covered that in video yesterday as well. But we'll dive back into that in a minute. The important thing here is don't forget that the contract Ayton just terminated through his Blazers buyout was 4 years, $133 million. And that's, of course, the contract he signed with Indiana originally in July 2022. And then the Phoenix Suns match it. However, Jake Fisher says the safest forecast remains that DeAndre Ayton winds up a Laker after clearing waivers this evening. Now, will it happen this evening? It could happen tomorrow. It could be delayed a little bit. But Jake Fisher, a pretty tuned-in reporter, especially as of late, it makes his prediction and says, according to sources, it seems that they are going to land DeAndre Ayton once he clears waivers. And we also have another report from Dan Wokey and some other reports here as well. But something to keep an eye on is, again, the Indiana Pacers. And after Miles Turner left the Pacers for the Milwaukee Bucks, Pacers now have a pretty big, gaping hole here for the center position. And one of the problems with that is they, of course, are without the point guard Tyrese Halliburton. However, they have registered interest in DeAndre Ayton, which is quite interesting. And obviously, that's going to be one of the bigger obstacles if the Lakers end up having other teams that are interested in. Of course, DeAndre Ayton will be, I guess, competing with the Pacers if they want to go ahead and maybe give him more than the MLE and all these different things. The Lakers can give him the full, or give him some of the MLE at least. Of course, they made another move, Jake LaRavia, who actually, I'll have another video coming out soon. Very, very good. A very underrated acquisition, though, of course, it's been overshadowed by the fact that they still do not have a center at this juncture. And that's, of course, a bigger issue here. But a couple of things I want to go over before we get into another big report surrounding Ayton is you can look back here, and this resurfaced yesterday night. JJ Redick on DeAndre Ayton in 2022. So this is back when he signed that max contract. Ayton's fantastic. He's fantastic at punishing mismatches. In the two-man pick and roll with him and Chris Paul, they're the number one offensive duo among high-volume pick and roll players. So he is fantastic. And this was, of course, surrounding, back in 2022 when JJ Redick was an analyst, praising DeAndre Ayton. Of course, this could kind of bring some light to the fact that it could work really, really well with Luka Doncic and DeAndre Ayton. However, there's also been some rumblings about Chris Paul wanting to return to LA, and maybe they bring back a duo that, of course, albeit it was 3 or 4 years ago, was one of the best in the NBA at, offense. And of course, that was through the pick and roll and all these different things. But even if you don't bring back Chris Paul, you can mimic what Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton did, maybe even better with Luka Doncic and DeAndre Ayton, because he is fantastic in the pick and roll. He's very good at finishing, and he's a lot better with, has a much better touch, and is actually a lot better at creating his own shot than basically every other center the Lakers have looked at, maybe excluding, or pretty close with Walker Kessler. But guys like Nick Claxton, Nick Richards, Robert Williams, all those guys are guys that thrive in the pick and roll, but also are mainly just dunkers. They don't have much of a bag outside of that. Whereas Ayton, he can shoot the ball a little bit. He can get in the post. He could actually create for himself. And it would be a story where if he goes to the Lakers and ends up actually playing well, it would probably be a one-year deal. But if he ends up playing well, then they could see him getting a pretty big contract going forward, either with the Lakers if it fits really well or elsewhere. And I think that's why all these reports are coming out now that the Lakers are the favorites. I mean, if you're Ayton, you'd want to sign with the Lakers to be able to increase your value with Luka Doncic and things like that. However, again, if there's another team that's willing to pay you more right now, then maybe that would be like the Indiana Pacers, then that would kind of make some sense as well here. And you can also see this here. I believe this was from Dan Wokey, but there's a bunch of different reports. Many front offices have been penciling Ayton in as a likely Los Angeles Laker. The safest forecast remains that Ayton winds up clearing. And this is, of course, this actually may have been from Jake Fisher again, but there was another report basically from Dan Wokey saying the same thing. Like at this point, it seems that Ayton is all but a lock for the Lakers, and of course they're gonna have to wait today anyway. I believe he clears waivers. I think it's tonight. Let me know down below the exact time that waivers will clear for him. But again, they'll probably start negotiating either now or after that, and start figuring out. I'm sure they've been in talks, have been negotiations, start figuring out what the most likely outcome is for a deal. Now, whether that's part of the MLE, whether that's everything the Lakers have left, that's of course up in the air and still going to be a pretty important factor in this is how much money they all make. But you look at the offseason they've had thus far. And of course, we had LeBron pick up his player option, Dorian Finney-Smith decline his player option and leave for a rival in the Rockets. And of course, they signed Jake LaRavia to a 2-year, $12 million deal, which, again, a very solid signing, a very good shooter, and something that I think, and someone rather, that I think is actually probably going to be penciled in as a 6th or 7th man right now. I mean, there's a world where game one comes and he's 6th man off the bench, and rather the first man off the bench, not 6th man off the bench, first man off the bench for JJ Redick, depending on how his preseason goes and all these different things, because he is a sharpshooter, and I like the idea in general here of Jake LaRavia, but that's a conversation for another day. Now, a couple other things to go over here. There's been also some, we'll take both sides of it here. There's also a couple things to go over. So you can see this here, and this was 15 hours ago from Dave McMenamin. Now, since then, there's some pessimism growing around Ayton. Again, this is the most latest report that he is expected to sign with the Lakers, but I want to give you guys all the, news so you guys make your own kind of judgments here. But he said, I've stayed pretty close on the DeAndre Ayton situation since the buyout. I would have reported if the Lakers were in the driver's seat. Chris Haynes reported the Lakers were in a strong position to land him. I haven't been given that terminology from the Lakers or Ayton's camp. So Chris Haynes as well reported that the Lakers are, favorites and probably going to land him. Dave McMenamin saying he hasn't heard that yet from the Lakers. So things, again, he hasn't talked about it since this, and this happened, yesterday early evening, and then of course these new reports came out this morning, or last night rather, into this morning. So going to give you that piece of information as well. I still think it's likely that they land him, but take it for what it is. Dave McMenamin says that not 100% confirmed that they're in the driver's seat yet, though I don't know many other teams that are necessarily pushing for him. I mean, obviously he's a very good player at times, but Indiana Pacers probably the biggest one. And there's also some truth here behind why he left Portland. So if there's any bit of concern here about his character, there is some reports about that. So Trailblazers grew frustrated with DeAndre Ayton's behavior, which ultimately led to his buyout. Examples include showing up late to team flights and practices, skipping rehab sessions, slamming chairs when subbed out of games, and throwing tantrums in the locker room after being benched for lack of effort. And of course, this is one of the problems with Ayton, is his, character and his lack of effort and all these different things. If the Lakers sign him, I'm sure they would do their due diligence and, make sure that he is not only a good locker room presence, or at least a good enough locker room presence, but, rather than being a big, the best way to put it is a big crash out, someone to crash out every time. I think with the Lakers, you'd have some more, accountability. They have JJ Redick, they have Luka Doncic, they have LeBron James, and I think the organization in general is in a better spot to manage someone like Ayton than the team in Portland there, especially with, they both have new coaches, with relatively new coaches in Portland with Chauncey Billups, and of course the Lakers and JJ Redick. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens here, because he is a very solid player coming off of the worst year of his career, but still very, very effective, and I like the fit a lot with the Lakers. I've been on the record saying that, and it would be, and again, he's like a 7-foot double machine. I think you just get him, you see what happens, and you go from there, because you do not have any better options. But folks, let me know down below what your thoughts are. Tons of news is dropping. We're going to keep you up to date with all the latest news, so make sure to hit the subscribe button, guys. Cheers.